Perfect.
My first was born, and we had very painful breastfeeding for the first 13 months of her life. And then at that point, we stopped with breastfeeding and she was transitioned over. Later found out she had a tongue tie, and we had been to lactation, we had been to professionals. Nobody ever looked under her tongue, nobody looked in her mouth, nobody identified that she had tension throughout her body. And I figured that out when I went and took my first myofunctional therapy course, which was around that she was about 23 months old or something. I came home, I flip her over. I'm like, oh my gosh, this kid is tongue and lip tied. Anyways, fast forward, take her to an oral surgeon, prep her oral surgeon, post op, all that fun stuff. And we did release the tongue. Immediately, symptoms improved. But, she has a high narrow palate. She has all your classical symptoms. And so at age 4, she went into an ALF appliance with a colleague of mine up in North Bethesda, Maryland, when we used to live up there. Um, what was incredible was her CBCT showed that she had very full sinus cavities. Her terminates, everything looked inflamed, and very little space for her to nasal breathe. And so then the pandemic happened. She was about halfway through her ALF appliance. We were going to do it for a year and see where she was. That came out about after a year after it was put in. And when we did a follow up CBCT, which may have even been a year later, she was still everything was open. Her nasal breathing looked beautiful. She had the ability to finally nasal breathe, right? And so, well, I know we'll talk more about this, but it's really challenging to work with a child who can't breathe and expect them to make progress in any type of therapy. She then went on when we moved down here. I was presenting her case with some colleagues at a conference and to dentists in the airway space, and they were like, "She needs more expansion." And I was like, "Okay, all right, let's
Let
do it."
let's pause for just a brief moment and just explain too, because the ALF is not a traditional expansion device. It does unwind some cranial strains and allow for the tongue to more naturally sit in the roof of the mouth and works to address some of the tension that's holding back growth. So it's reasonable to understand just that nuance as we go through this that she went through and she saw tremendous benefits, but you were told expansion was still on the docket.
Yes, and I will say, like, her tonsils within 3 months went down to normal size. They were almost kissing, and they went down to almost like size 1, or they were size 1. So, I was looking at her, like, in her mouth, I'm like, "It's cold and flu season." This was the fall before the pandemic. So, like, I was like, "Okay, they're still in school. Like, this is a kid who gets sick all the time. She's not sick. Her tonsils look healthy. What is happening? Like, this is so cool." And she was in myofunctional therapy, and that was one of the things I liked about the ALF appliance was it leaves the palate open. And she also was like a little bit of a sensory kid and certain sensory preferences. And so I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. It really kind of calmed her down, like her nervous system really in check, which was so beautiful.